Hello everyone on YouTube. Give me a shout out in the comments if you can see this, if you can hear me. I'm trying out a brand new software. This is technically my second time doing it. I gave it a try a few weeks ago and just randomly created a live stream. And so I'm considering this my proper first time doing this because I've got a whole presentation for y'all today. Thank you so much for joining. So many of you joined the waitlist for this today. I'm so excited to help with your project. So if you can hear me, let me know in the comments, please. And hey Laura, thanks for being here. So I'm gonna try another really fancy thing here. Let's see, look at that. Look, I can make comments come up on the screen. This is gonna be fun. I'm excited. Hello to Mimi, thank you so much for joining. So the first thing I want to do here is, let's see, I'm gonna pull up some slides. I'd love to hear where y'all are tuning in from or where you're gardening if you'd like to share that too. You could share your location, you could share your, maybe your zone, your plant hardiness zone if you're in the US. That could be your USDA zone if you knew that. Hi Ellie, thank you so much y'all for being here. Laura, thank you. I appreciate you being the first person to try out the chat here. I'm gonna make this a little smaller there. Perfect. So this is a live stream, of course. I want to disclose that. This is on the internet. We're on YouTube, and shortly I'm going to pull it up on Instagram as well. There will be a replay for folks who can't make it live. Wonderful. We got someone from Sacramento. We've got Zone 9B. Nice and warm there. So yes, and the idea today is I'd love to keep a conversation going in the chat. If you have questions about your yard, as we move through the material, please just shout things out in the chat. I'm excited to help you with your project, even though we are doing a live stream. And to anyone who's watching this replay too, put stuff in the comments. I'd like this to be more of a conversation because this is what I do. And hello, by the way, my name's Eve. You've probably found me from YouTube videos initially. That seems to be where I'm getting the most traction as far as shouting into the internet void. And it's a pleasure to meet you all. We've got Willamette Valley, we've got Ohio. Oh my goodness, this is great. So this is what I do. I started teaching in-person classes. I've been gardening since I was 13. I was just one of those kids that like I found my passion pretty young and early and have been obsessed. I started a landscape design, but I was 19 when I did my first landscape design. So I've been doing this for a while. I love, hey, Mrs. Newton, it's nice to see you. I love doing this. I love teaching classes. I've been doing it locally and then just recently started up, this is Garden Project Academy, started up this online version so I could start helping more people. So I like to bring this, like kind of the same in-person feel to these classes. So let me pull up, please keep sharing information about where you're tuning in from, and I would also love to hear just a little bit about your project. Please just tell me what you're starting, what you're working on. And while you're doing that, I'm going to click on a few things here and I'm going to start up the Instagram live stream. So cool thing about Instagram is that you have to add in a few more details here. I think there's a way I can do this. Let's see. How do I do that? We've got Oregon Zone B, wonderful. Yeah, please type in the chat. Tell me about your project. What do you start? Are you brand new to gardening? Are you kind of improving a space that you already have? Love to hear. Yeah, so we're gonna keep rolling here. I'll put the replay up on Instagram then, because this is not letting me add. So this is the thing about, the interesting thing about trying a live streaming software is there's some stuff you can't test out until you're actually live. Like I've done a couple trial runs here, but there's a few features that just, you can't do it till you do it. So Teresa, you're working on a small meadow. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. I just, in the past year, I volunteered with a local program to create a meadow in a park locally. And it was so much fun, and started with a mulch layer, then added some native wildflowers from there. It's amazing. We've got someone from Turkey. Sierra, you're turning your backyard into a native pollinator and food production haven. That sounds incredible. So I'm going to pull up some slides here. Perfect. Now I'm going to do the famous internet question. Let's see. Can you see my slides? Everybody's heard that question about 1,000 times at this point, huh? Well, let me hide my bookmarks bar, give us some more space. Perfect. Yeah, if someone can let me know in the chat if you can see this picture. We're going to go to present. So switching back and forth from this will be exciting. So here we go. Thanks for bearing with me, y'all. So Mrs. Newton, you're working on planting some vegetables in the ground and in your yard. I know you're going to start with at least 1, maybe 2 dahlias pretty soon too. We've got front yard in California with native perennials. 3rd year as a home gardener, mostly focused on container grown tomatoes, peppers, and herbs, sunflowers, succulents. Oh, we got someone from Maryland. That's funny. I used Maryland as my example place and you'll see in one of these slides coming up. And Amanda, you said that last year was your first year gardening, first time waiting for all your plants to wake up. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. Everybody's going to come back so much stronger this next year. We've got a cottage garden. Mimi is doing the same thing as Sierra. Sierra is turning a backyard into native pollinator haven, food production. Mimi's, you guys could connect there. You're on the same boat. Great. Thank you for letting me know you can see everything. And corner flower garden. Great. All right. I'm going to let you all keep going in the chat. Keep telling me about your project. I'll circle back again. Mimi's first year trying raised bed vegetable gardening. So today, the plan for today is to start diving into just inspiration for your landscaping project. So we're going to talk about just some of my favorite strategies for collecting, in-person inspiration, as well as just digitally collecting pictures, for example, visual inspiration. So we're going to go over both. Both are important, but the focus of today, we're gonna focus on finding an inspiring picture so you can use that as essentially a recipe. You could break that down into ingredients to create your landscape design plan. So when I work with my clients, my students in my online course, one of the very first things that we do is start collecting inspiration, looking at inspiring pictures. So there's a couple reasons for this. Number one, it's a ton of fun, and it's just you're daydreaming, you're dreaming about what you're going to create in your space, and you're starting to create a plan and a vision. We're articulating that end goal. We're clarifying what it is you want to create. And then from there, it also makes it easier to communicate exactly what you have in mind. So when working with clients, I always ask folks to please start by collecting a few images that they really like. And then we sit down, we look at those. And on top of that, I also will often bring a pile of gardening books, as many as I can carry in, and we'll flip through some of these books and just start that conversation of, pointing to pictures. Oh, I like this aspect. I don't like this aspect, because I have to use this overused saying, but pictures, it's worth 1,000 words. Time and time again, people will say, oh, I'm really attracted to a Mediterranean style garden. And then they'll show me example pictures. And there might be some flavor of that, but it might be very different from one person's interpretation of a Mediterranean garden might be very different from someone else's. So whether you're creating a landscape design plan for yourself, or if you're working with a designer, collecting really good inspiration right from the start, it just makes it so much easier to communicate exactly what your vision is, what you like, your style, before you have any landscape design experience, before you have words to describe exactly what that is. So, checking in with the chat. Laura's new to gardening. Oh my goodness. Pacific Northwest native plants. Nice. I can help the most with some of the native, or the local things. So I teach landscape design, gardening online. I teach more of the general things because I know you all are tuning in from all over the world. Remember, of course, that gardening is specific. There will be some limitations occasionally to things that I can help with or share, and I'll point that out, making specific plant recommendations. I've got resources for how to do that for your space, but if you're local, then I can help the most because I do know the plants around here, especially west of the Cascades. Yes, oh my gosh, gardening can be rolling with the punches for sure. So we've got some decisions to make, Ellie. I definitely understand. Pet friendly is important. Wonderful. Yes, you had some dahlias going for sure. So back to my slides here. Today, just the agenda in general, we're going to talk about what good inspiration is, what it is not. I've got some of my favorite resources for finding pictures just online. Some of them they're not going to be super revolutionary or groundbreaking. We're going to talk about Pinterest. I do have a few tips though, some tricks for finding better inspiration online as well as local inspiration. So there's a typo right there. Some inspiration. So we're going to look at just some things that you can do also just away from a screen, some of my favorite gardening books and such. And really some of the best inspiration that you can get for your project is going to be outside and in person. And pictures, they serve a different purpose than the outside inspiration. We're going to talk about both today. And then after the end of today's presentation, if you are willing to submit, if you find a picture that you like or something that you're pretty sure you like, or maybe you can go so far as to find that perfect picture between now and tomorrow, that'd be great. Spend a little time on this. If you want to submit a picture though, I will break that down and turn that into the makings of a plan in tomorrow's live stream. So again, we're meeting tomorrow, same time at 1 o'clock Pacific time. So let me grab that link. You can probably see my document here. We've got all the links to share. Which one are we going for? We've got our form link. I'm going to put that form link here. If you want to copy and paste this link, I'll put it in the description below. Awesome, that did go through the chat there. I'll put that in the description below this video after, so if you're watching the replay, any link that I mention or share is going to be below. But now's a good time if you want to copy and paste that into something, a draft email, for example. You want to submit your pictures, then you are going to get a running start on, breaking down your images. I'm going to teach you how to do that. But also, if you're the example picture, you're going to get a lot more helpful information. So, and that's going to be tomorrow, turning pictures into a plan. So, a little bit about me. I did a quick introduction at the start already, but I teach classes online mostly. Right now I'm not doing in-person design services at this time just because I've been doing so much of these online classes. We've got some exciting stuff coming up this spring. So the next thing is Ready, Set, Landscape Design. This is a 2-part video. So I'm doing a 2-part live stream right now. This is different. This is a 2-part video series, and I'll email so I'm making updates to these videos and kind of finalizing everything right now. So if you're interested in getting right now we're collecting inspiration. This is, when do you hire help? When do you do it yourself? What are the common mistakes when installing a new landscaping project, things to watch out for, and just some of the things to save you some time, energy, money throughout the process, things that I wish I knew at the start, things I share with my clients at the start of the process. So that's the waitlist for that is gardenprojectacademy.com/ready. I'm dropping that link as well if you want to join that. So at this point, all it is a little form on my website. So fill out that form and then you'll be added to that list. So once that's ready, I'll send you that video. And then the other thing I'm gearing up for right now, one of the reasons I'm not doing in-person services right now is because I've got a 6-week landscape design course online. So for do-it-yourselfers, where I guide you step by step through the process. So I have a course that's evergreen. It's on demand. It's online all the time. That guides you through the process. But every spring, we've been doing this in person, where we meet once a week for just an overview and some homework and help with your project. And then I do additional Q&As as well. So this is like the other thing. It starts April 14th. So this is in the works. So this webpage is really rough. I just was working on it yesterday. I wasn't going to share it today, but I decided to last minute. So forgive any typos or things on this website. At this point, it's just that wait list. So there's a couple links. Let me grab that link number 3 there. So that's gardenprojectacademy.com/help. If you're interested in that, these are some of the big, so you can take the course that's, asynchronous, that's on demand, you can watch it whenever. This one is kind of like an upgrade if you want guidance through the process. And my disclaimer at the start of this, of course, is that, and I can't properly be your landscape designer if I'm not there on site. I can teach you, I can share resources and information and guidance, but remember, it's always up to you to decide what's best for you, your yard, because if I'm not there in person, I can't properly make recommendations. So just keep that in mind. Persephone, I love your name. Oh my goodness. Xeriscaping in Walla Walla. So you are local as well. Soil testing, acquiring native plants. Oh my goodness. I am excited to help out with that. And also at the end of the, the main part of this presentation, I'm going to go through like the resources, the main topic of today. But if you have additional questions, I'll hang out at the end. I'm happy to help out. Humble Roots Nursery for native plants in Oregon. Great info. Awesome. We got some local folks sharing resources. Please, anybody has some favorite nurseries or local resources? We definitely have a few Pacific Northwest folks here today. Thank you so much for sharing that. So today we're focusing on aesthetic, aesthetics. We're looking for inspiration, visual inspiration. And I do want to say, designing a landscape, it's not just about the aesthetics or the pictures, right? So the beauty is important, but we're also like finding these pictures, we're clarifying the goals and the vision. There's so much more. A landscape is alive. There's so much more you get out of it. Your values should play into it. It's not just, one of my favorite things about gardening in general is that it is not just a consumption thing. It is gardening, it's creating something new. Of course, there's, resources and materials and inputs, but something that's really magical about plants is that they are mostly made up of sunlight, water, and air. A lot of people think of plants as like a little factory or an equation where you input fertilizer and water and then out comes the plant. And then if you turn that plant back into soil, that fertilizer goes back into the soil, but they actually collect energy from the sun. They collect air from the atmosphere and they turn that into new things. And that's how we're fixing plants fix nitrogen in the soil because they capture it from the atmosphere and they put that in the soil. So you are creating something new. There's just so much that goes into a project beyond just beauty, although beauty is very important. So today we're focusing on the aesthetics, we're goal setting, we're clarifying a vision, but it's just not the only part of gardening. So I do want to touch on that. And the other part that I want to touch on is that gardening is this choosing visual inspiration, making a plan for what you want in your space is just half of the equation because your space is not a blank canvas. So we're articulating the vision and the end goal, but inside my course or, in other places, the next step, what you should move on to and do next is learning about your space, conducting a site survey, learning, no matter how much you think you have a blank canvas, you do not. A space, it's alive. There's going to be unique characteristics from one foot to another foot. Soil can change. The plants or resources that are there can change. Even if you have a yard that looks like the yard in this example where you're like, there's no way, there's differences. There are differences from one spot to another. And creating a landscape design is sort of, you have a vision and you're applying it to the space. And you should also be learning from the space, applying that back to the vision as well. So you have to have visual inspiration, but don't forget to also spend time learning about the space, letting that inform your plans. So the goal of today, I challenge you to find a soulmate picture. And this is, again, it's one of the first steps with my clients or with students in my course, is to find one picture that is exactly what you're looking for, or as close to what you're looking for as you can find. And so I call it a soulmate picture because it's, when you see it, you just know, you get this gut feeling, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And of course, you're never going to find an exactly perfect picture. You're never going to find an exactly perfect picture, but you will get a failing grade from me, if you select a soulmate picture and you're like, well, this is the one, except I don't like this, and I don't like these plants, and I don't like the pathway, and I don't like that. I want to change this. That's not a soulmate picture. You're trying to find something that captures what you're looking for. And again, even if you have no experience, you typically, when you see it, you can, it's kind of like a gut feeling. You're like, this is what I've had in mind. This is what I'm looking for. And you want to look at pictures and find inspiration, take in information until you get to the point where you're like, okay, now I know what I'm looking for. And then you know it when you see it. So that's the goal of today. And I also, because no picture is going to be 100% perfect, having a few other pictures. So the homework in module 1 inside the course is to find 3 pictures. So 1 soulmate picture and 2 supplemental pictures. So maybe if there's a curving pathway in the soulmate picture, but you want it to be a slightly different material, then there's another pathway in another picture that more accurately represents that. So you could very clearly sit the 2 side by side and just envision what that would look like if that pathway were changed. Or it could be some runners up that, maybe they're really close to what you're looking for, but slightly different. The closer you can get, though, to what you're looking for, the better, because that'll make the next step in this process, the stuff we're going to go over tomorrow, a lot easier. So a soulmate picture, It needs to be zoomed out a little bit more. So in this example, you might look at this and say, this is exactly the view that I want out of my window, but this is just not going to be enough information. So imagine you're working with an interior designer and you provide them with a picture of, a couple of knickknacks or a shelf. It's going to teach that interior designer a little bit about your style, but it's not going to capture the whole vision. There's information you can get from this. It's helpful, but it's not a soulmate picture. It's not enough information. So you want to zoom out a bit. So you want to capture some layers of plants. We want to see some mulch, if there is mulch present. We want to see, what's around the plants. Any soil covering materials. You want to see the ground a little bit. We want to see what's in the background a little bit, maybe even more so than in this picture. Again, no picture is going to be perfect, so that's why having a few examples can be helpful. Just generally how it feels to be in this space. We want to see the layers of plants and things that we want to see a lot of elements that you like in one picture. So think about capturing a picture of at least, so back to the interior design example, you want at least a big corner of that room, or perhaps a picture of an entire room. We don't want a picture of just one wall or just one shelf. If you have anything in your space, like a fence or a brick wall, for example, that's inevitably going to be a part of the look and feel of the space, ideally you will be finding inspiring pictures that include that element, because that just has such an effect on the look and feel of the space, and it provides some level of limitations. So if your yard, for example, is on a slope, you want to be looking at inspiring pictures on a slope. A little bit obvious, but just in general, finding just a few things to keep in mind as you move through this process. So you mentioned that the worst side of things, the equations and the chemicals. Oh, when I was talking about how gardening is not just inputs and outputs. Absolutely, I can help with the soil stuff too. Hit me up. We'll go over that. If you want to hang out till the end, we can chat a little bit more. I got your back. So the other thing about finding the visual inspiration. I have dream big here with an asterisk, so I'd like to encourage folks to find pictures, dream a little bit bigger than your budget, because there are sometimes strategies, there's ways you can get creative and create a similar effect without, on a tighter budget. Of course, I use this as the big example. If you have a very small budget, probably not going to be able to install, a multi-tier waterfall swimming pool, but do dream a little bit bigger than, just ever so slightly bigger than your budget allows, because there could be some options or creative strategies. Maybe you don't have the capacity to install a beautiful mosaic tile wall as a focal point in your garden, but maybe a mural could be an example of some other creative way to create a similar effect on a slightly lower budget, or if you have a little bit less time. So just dream a little bit bigger than your budget allows. And yeah, if you would like your inspiring picture to be featured tomorrow, good timing, Ellie, with your question. I'd love to see it, and then I can use it as an example tomorrow and break that down into inspiration. So let me grab that link again here. Form link, there we go. Dropping that in the chat. Would love to, yeah. If you can find a picture by, tonight, tomorrow morning, it'll give me a little time. So at 1 o'clock, I could use like an hour or so to drop things into the slideshow and learn a little bit about it. But that'd be fun. So we talked about this, where you're gardening. So now we're going to move into some online resources and getting into more specific things. So the more specific places where you can find these pictures. So I mentioned that I used Maryland as an example, and here's the example on the slides. So as you're starting to research some inspiration, ideally start with including your region. Start local as much as you can. So if you're searching online for things, put your region. It could be as specific as your county, and maybe there's some things that you can find that are just in your general area. I've got some local garden tours in my area, and there's pictures and videos online of local gardens. I mean, if you can find a resource like that, you can't beat it, because it's going to be realistic. It's going to show what's possible for you in your area, using plants that are available in your area, focusing on drought-tolerant plants, native plants. Xeriscaping is a fancy word essentially for drought-tolerant landscaping. These are some really good keywords to put as you're searching for things if you're looking for books. Start with, if you can find that intersection of something that's regionally specific and also that includes some of these topics. It's not, gardening with native plants or gardening with drought-tolerant plants, it's not just a style. It does tend to have, as you'll find, it does tend to have a certain look to it, but there are so many plants, and I like to say you can create just about any landscaping style with native plants. If you're looking for something that's a little more formal, you can create that with native plants. It might not be the most ecologically ideal situation as far as wildlife and such, but every native plant that you add to your landscape is a benefit to not just you, but other living creatures. Native plants are going to be more drought tolerant. They're going to be more lower maintenance, and just it is possible to install a beautiful, luscious landscape and not have to have any sort of irrigation system after those plants get installed. So maybe you do something temporary, for the first couple of growing seasons until the plants fill in. They establish root systems. Got to help them transition, but after that point, you might not need an irrigation system if you're focusing on plants that are just happy with the amount of rain that you get in your area. So this can be drought-tolerant plants. These could be native plants. Leaning into as many natives as possible, it's just the right thing to do. And they're the lowest maintenance, and they are beautiful. So just don't be, if you're seeing a lot of repeating inspiration, if things look similar or it's a certain aesthetic that you don't like, just keep going for a little while, dig a little deeper. I'm willing to bet that you can find some really creative examples of different styles achieved with native plants and with drought-tolerant plants without it having to have just a very specific look. So just stick that in your brain. You can create a landscape with any style using native plants. So use these search terms. Start when you're starting out researching things online. So I mentioned I've got some of these resources are going to be pretty obvious. Pinterest is one example of something. If you think about collecting visual inspiration, Pinterest is the first thing to come into your mind. I'm sure most of us here have spent plenty of time on Pinterest, but I'm going to share a few tips for those who are new to it. And also, I've got, my favorite trick for getting on Pinterest and finding the best inspiration is this down here at the bottom of this slide. If you search for something on Pinterest, you're going to get a lot of repeats of the same images as you search for different similar things. But the best examples are when you pull up an image and you scroll below that image. The Pinterest algorithm is going to suggest similar images that have a similar look and feel. And I find that this feature right here can be really powerful. You can find better images this way sometimes than just by the search alone, in my experience. So that's my trick, is to find something you like initially via search, and then start pulling things up, and you can go down a loop here where you find something else that you like, click on that, and then as you go, you're sort of training Pinterest in a direction, this is what I'm looking for, and it'll continue to suggest more and more relevant things. These are the best pictures that you're going to find. So just a Pinterest trick in general. And if you are new to Pinterest, keep in mind too that, let me see here. Let me pull up my slides again. Keep in mind too that that it's really hard to go back and find something. If you're kind of going down the Pinterest rabbit hole, it can be difficult to go back and find an image again once you've come across it. So that's why I do recommend creating an account. I'm not affiliated with Pinterest in any way. That would be great, but maybe not today, maybe in the future. But creating an account, you can create boards. And if you're someone who doesn't really want to share a ton of information online about, your dreams for your landscape, for example, it is possible to set a board as secret. So the idea of Pinterest is, a board is like a collection. It's like a folder, or it's like a pin board, right? And then the ideas themselves are like pins that you're pinning to the board. So great. I'm glad to hear we've got some native plant fans here as well. And yeah, so Pinterest, this is the obvious place to start, but it's hard to beat. I mean, this is the entire purpose of Pinterest. They are the best. Another great resource is Houzz. So Houzz. So you can, they have a really cool part of their website where you can go up to get ideas, and then you can go to landscape in general, or you can select something a little bit more specific. So pool, backyard, porch, front yard, outdoor kitchen, and so on. And then they have all of these features. And what's really cool about this, these pictures are uploaded by contractors. So you can search by region and potentially find someone to do the work in your area if you're looking to hire some help. And then once you found something that you like, if you found someone you like, you could see some of their other projects as well by just clicking on their profile there. But I love their filters here. What's great about this is you're not getting on Pinterest. There's a lot of AI stuff, pros and cons to that. More on that in a second. But here you're getting, you can narrow it by where you live. You can filter that. I love that you can search by color, for example. If you have an idea of specifically what you want in the space, a pergola, for example, you can just look at so many real ideas in people's yards. Every now and then you'll come across a rendering that was created in a design software, but they are usually pretty realistic. Yeah, here's a rendering, for example. Most of them are going to be pretty realistic. Now, renderings, AI images, they can be helpful in a lot of ways, but nothing beats being able to see something that was actually installed. It's going to be the most realistic. It's also going to be the most helpful as we break that down and use that to create a plan. So Houzz is a wonderful resource, kind of a non-Pinterest thing for finding online images. And then from there, let's talk about books. Books are a little bit obvious, of course, again, but a trip to the library, it's worth the time. If you are able to go to the library, sit down, bring a cup of coffee with a lid on it, of course, and just look through every gardening book in the gardening section. You can start with the regionally specific books. I was going to say too, I've got a list of some of the other areas. You could go to the gardening section of the library, but also check out the architecture, the design section. You're going to find more of the landscaping, landscape design, landscape architecture books there. And some of those tend to be the ones that have a lot of pictures, where they're mostly picture books. Look for regionally specific books first. And then do-it-yourself type books, landscaping projects, DIY gardening projects, that can be a totally different section. And it also, another interesting trick is to go to the travel section. So if you can find books based on famous gardens, for example, those can be, the Portland Japanese gardens, for example. You can learn so much about the history, the culture of a space, even if you're not visiting the Portland Japanese gardens. The inspiring photos in those books can be so helpful. And then I recommend, you can, of course, scan things in or just take pictures with your phone. That tends to be what I do. Make a little album on your phone and save things as you go. The library, fewer people know that you can get magazines at the library. Tons of back issues of popular gardening magazines. You can place magazines on hold through many library districts. It kind of depends on the library you have in your area. But if I go to my local library, I open up, the magazine stands always have the newest issues sitting out on the shelves. If you lift it up, it kind of cranks up. Lifts up and there'll be just a stack of the back issues underneath. So I feel like I've had multiple friends I've been at the library with, and they had no idea that the shelves lifted up like that, and that you could just pick up a pile of fine gardening magazines and just drink your coffee and flip through all of those. Visiting a local bookstore as well. You can browse tons of, especially the bigger bookstores, you can browse tons of magazine options, support your local bookstores, and also placing books on hold, checking books out from the library. Some people feel that, they're taking a resource, by checking out, 50 books or something from the library, that you're taking up a resource that somebody else, should be using. But at the same time with the libraries, they tend to get a lot of support based on how much the library is being used. So placing books on hold, checking books out, that magazines, same thing. It actually helps the library. So I dare you to go up to the 50 book limit. Maybe that's a little excessive, but yeah, I dare you. And also nothing can beat sometimes just sitting down, getting off the screen for a little while, sitting down with a pile of books. And a cup of coffee is a great way to daydream about the future of your garden project. So here I have just a list of some various gardening websites and blogs where you can browse for lots of inspiration. I'm a big fan of Monrovia and their plant database. It's wonderful. All of these places are great. And if you have any other favorite sources or resources, please share in the chat. And As you discover things too, share them with me. If you find any databases like similar to House, for example, that have resources that you're really enjoying, I will add them to this next time I teach it. I'll add it to the course. Oh no, my picture went away. Interesting. So here I have maybe if I go like this, yeah. Here I have an example of just this is an AI generated image that I created using Canvas Magic, what's it called here? Magic Media tool, where you just type in a prompt. So I just want to touch on the AI aspect of that. So AI images are getting better and better. Let me pull up the AI pins here. To the point that sometimes you can identify them. They tend to have a little bit, like the shadows can be a little bit odd. It can be hard, even though they have good shadows, it can be kind of odd to pin down exactly why they look a little bit off. Things can be a little bit glowy. Everything looks a little bit softer. So, and also if you look at this example, when you look a little bit closer at things, some of the chair legs are going to be a little bit weird. In this case, if you look at this patio, it looks like there might be a way to get up the steps around this giant couch, but the couch basically blocks the way up and down. I guess there's certain aspects of these images as far as the layout, the look and feel, that can be a little bit unrealistic that you're never going to see in real life, in a real life example. Also, having a steeper edge along, where there's water, for example, without there being a railing. I guess some of these can lead you a little bit astray when it comes to inspiration. The plantings can be unrealistic sometimes too. Part of finding visual inspiration is that we want to be able to break this down, identify some of the plants in that picture to create a similar effect, or many times we will be substituting plants for something that will do well in your area, in your climate, in the soil you have. We will be replacing things often, but sometimes it can just be sharing plants that are just completely unrealistic. But at the same time, it can be helpful. Maybe you didn't think about having a circular bench, or you like the idea of the circles of gravel, for example, having a different material in the circular shape. So AI images, they definitely can inspire some new ideas, but I don't think they should be your soulmate picture, your top source of inspiration. Just get a little something out of them, but they can just be unrealistic as far as how many things are blooming at once, and as time goes on, they are getting better and better. So maybe at some point that'll just all be basically real plants. But, at this point, there's, how would you navigate through this space? For example, the shape of the seating area is helpful, but, good to lean on the more realistic things. And something that, let me go back to my slides here. Just a little bit of a trick. If you search the internet for before, semicolon, and then you have the year, the month, the day, put that into Google search, then you can put 2023 in there, January 1st, 2023, and that's before there were quite as many AI images all over the internet. So if you're ever searching for something and you want to find something via the internet before AI content became as much of a thing, that's kind of a little trick. I learned that via a TikTok, I think, recently. But I thought that was a really helpful trick, and you can search for landscape design ideas your area and put that in, and then go to Google Images and see what you can find. Some other online sources that can be helpful: local nursery websites, gardening blogs, and just searching for some of the more old school garden blogs that, we're talking Blogspot, for example. Plants have been around for a long time. Some of the plants that have been around for a very, newer cultivars, for example, of plants are always coming out, but it's the native plants, the plants that are tried and true, that do really well in a landscape for the long term. They've been around for a little while. So finding some older resources, that's a great place for a great source of inspiration as well. I cannot recommend highly enough finding an online gardening group, a local one. So Facebook, for example, a Facebook group locally, or Reddit, for example, anything that you can find. Dave's Garden can be a great source as well. But I have learned so much from my region's Facebook group. And if you have any questions, if you want to post, for some of the best local resources, any local garden tours, being able to have there are sometimes local native plant landscaping groups. These You can do plant swaps. You can find out when the plant sales are. Sometimes people will just post and be like, hey, I have extras of this plant. Like, does anybody want them? Cannot recommend this highly enough because, if you have someone that's helping you with your landscaping project or gardening, you can still benefit from having some local support as well, some gardening friends. Let me pull this up big again. And I mentioned garden tours. If you can find local garden tours, this is something that's going to be more time consuming, but this is my favorite way to learn to this day. I've been doing this for a while now, but nothing beats being able to visit a space locally and see what somebody, especially if you can find some like people, any organizations that provide tours of people's private yards. The Hardy Plant Society of Oregon, if you're here in the Pacific Northwest, that's a great resource. So you you join. I think it's like a $40 per year membership, something like that. And then you are given a book of open gardens, and every weekend there might be 2 or 3 gardens in the area where it's just people's yards. They open them up, and then they allow folks within the Hardy Plant Society of Oregon to tour these spaces. So it's a little bit more private. I think sometimes they limit the number of people who can sign up and visit these gardens. But if you can ask somebody who has done it, it's realistic. It's what you can do locally in your area. You can ask them questions about, maintenance or budget. You can see what things realistically look like and how many things can be in bloom at once and different styles and different uses of native plants. Highly recommend. And then sometimes there are more organized ones. Natural garden tours are worth searching for as well. And sort of an unusual resource, one of my favorite ways to learn as well is just going on walks. I'm outside of not too far from Portland, Oregon, and just about anywhere in Portland you can go for a walk and look at people's landscaping, and they have incredible plants. And everybody has a slightly different style. But if you can just go on a walk in your neighborhood and see, especially if you live in a house that's maybe similar to some of your neighbors' houses, you can see all the different things that people do in their front yards. You can see what plants are thriving well in your area with similar soil to the soil you have in similar conditions. Just politely take pictures of certain elements. It is here in the United States, it's perfectly legal for you to take a picture of somebody's front yard as long as you're on a public street or public sidewalk. Legal does not always mean kind or polite, of course, but I find that most gardeners been doing this for a long time. For the first time ever, somebody was upset that I took a picture in their yard. I think I am lucky in a lot of ways because, I'm a gardener and I'm geeking out about some plant, and I'm in Portland, Oregon, and people tend to be generally chill about people taking pictures of like a plant in their yard. But so just be careful doing this, of course. But if you find, you're on a walk in your neighborhood, maybe with a friend, and you find a plant that you like, if you can take a picture of that, you can get it identified later. If you could talk to your neighbors about their yards as well, you can learn so much and get some really good inspiration that way. Whoops. There we go. Commercial landscaping is also really interesting. My picture was... There we go. Man, that's so interesting. I can see that picture down here. So imagine a parking lot, some shrubs growing. I think my Fred Meyer grocery store, there's some incredible native plant landscaping around the Fred Meyer, not too far from where I live. The plants that can grow in these commercial spaces, if you think, hospitals, schools, even some restaurants in this area, they can have incredible landscaping. So don't be, I guess start watching for plants just about everywhere. And if something can survive in, a parking strip somewhere, right at the edge of a parking lot, that's probably a pretty tough plant. It's probably pretty likely to survive along your driveway, for example. Right plant, right place will always apply. But it is an interesting, kind of a unique opportunity to start spotting plants around, plants that might not be getting a ton of maintenance or attention as well, some of the tougher plants. And then let me try refreshing this. Maybe we're just not loading anymore. There we go. So, of course, if you have the time visiting, I'm going to read these out in case some folks are listening. Arboretums, botanical gardens, community gardens, plant nurseries with demonstration gardens. I mean, that's a fantastic resource because many of them do have demonstration gardens. Plant tags, things will be properly labeled. And also, if you have any questions, then you're right there with people who can help you identify plants, and you might even be able to get some. Visiting just the park right up the road, if there's any landscaping there, native plant landscaping in any of these spaces, moving into maybe some more, places that are less cared for by humans, things that are less cultivated, those type of parks. Wedding venues can be a unique one. Some wedding venues are more private and shut down, but others are happy to, be a park, but they might have really nice landscaping that they're maintaining. Some can be more naturalistic, use native plants as well. And of course, learning from wild spaces, unmaintained spaces. It's, as far as low maintenance goes, if there's nobody out there irrigating and fertilizing these plants, if you can go out into these spaces, learn what plants are growing, see the wildflowers that are in bloom in their natural habitat, you can learn so much and apply that to your yard. Try to bring a little bit of that wild into your space as well. And any local nonprofits that educate on gardening or, gardening with native plants as well can be fantastic. So that was a long list of all kinds of resources for, finding inspiring pictures. If you have any other favorite resources, places that you have found images, I would love to hear. I'd like to keep adding to my list of ideas for folks, for future folks who take this class and people inside my course as well. Please share away. And I'm going to drop the link as well. If you would like to submit, if you find a picture that you love and you want to be featured tomorrow is when we take a look at a picture like this, and I will apply some of my landscape designer magic to it. And I guarantee I will point out pictures or, aspects of pictures that can influence how you're drawing out your landscape design plan. I guarantee I'm going to point out some things you didn't think of before. I have some little categories of things that you can look for and how you can apply that to your landscaping as you're collecting inspiration. So also breaking down a picture like this, if you like the look and feel of something, how can you make some substitutions? We'll talk about that a little bit. So let me drop that form link again. Here is that. Mrs. Newton enjoys going on walks too. I'm all about a walk. It's one of the best ways to learn. Yeah, so there's the link to that. If you would like to submit a picture, I would love to feature you. And so tomorrow we're going to meet up at 1 o'clock again. And then the other thing, if you want to join the waitlist for Ready Set Landscape Design, I'll put all the links to these down in the description below. If you want to join Ready Set Landscape Design, it's a free 2-part video series. So again, that's the introduction to if you're starting up a new landscaping project, just what I wish that I knew the first time I took on a project like this, things that can save you time, energy, money, whether, how to approach planning, when you need a landscape design plan, when you don't, when you should hire help, when you can DIY things a little bit more. And if you're interested in learning more about Design Together, go to gardenprojectacademy.com/help. So this is the live in-person 6-week one where I guide you through the process of starting a landscape design. So this, the reason that I'm teaching online classes is I'm just so excited to be able to help people who are all over the world with their project in a way that's more affordable than hiring a landscape designer here in the US. It's around $4,000 was the last time I looked up the average cost of a landscape design to get one, working with the designer to get it customized and drawn out and planned out. Typically people do not have the budget for that, or you might want to allocate that budget toward the project itself. And then you lean into the do-it-yourself approach, but then you miss out on those resources. So I'm bringing all of this online because I was doing in-person landscape design services for a while and then charging by the hour, what I need to charge to be able to run a business, driving all over the place and helping folks and following up. I really loved the possibilities of teaching online and creating these online alternative resources. So they might not be a perfect alternative to hiring a designer, but they're pretty good. They can get you rolling, and then you can bring somebody local in to consult on what you created, for example, to get additional resources from there. So that's sort of the goal with this. So every spring I've been doing this where, I guide you through the process through live sessions. We do it via Zoom, so you can, unmute, you can share the project that you're working on. I'll give you feedback on your design, what you have drawn out. I have activities to sort of guide you through the process, how to do a site survey, collecting inspiration. You've got a running start on that as well. So if you're interested in that, that's gardenprojectacademy.com/help. So the 2-part video series, this is free. This is a paid course. And it's, if you're interested, this is going to be limited to 50 participants because I want to be able to have time to help everybody and get to know your projects. And I found that can be about the max number of yards I can store in my brain. So, and then of course for tomorrow, I'd love to see y'all for round 2. Another resource I wanted to share. I have a YouTube video about how to identify landscaping plants. So if you're on a walk and you spot something, of course there's plant ID apps, taking a picture. This video, this one, I haven't watched it in a little while. It's one of my older videos, but it can be trickier to identify a landscaping plant than to identify, if identifying a native plant, for example, you can put that into iNaturalist and get a really accurate ID on that. But landscaping plants, they've been hybridized. There might be certain cultivars of this, that, or whatever, and they can, if you use, Google, there's various apps. You can use your iPhone picture settings, can identify things generally. There's through Google Chrome can get you pretty close to something, but the apps do have their limitations as well. So this video kind of dives deeper into if you want to identify what the cultivar is. Typically the best thing to do is posting it in a local gardening group or on Reddit or Facebook or something like that, to somebody who has a group where people have a little more experience locally. They know the plants, they can kind of identify that cultivar. Generally people are going to be the best way. Spoiler alert there. But this is something, if you are on a walk or you are collecting inspiration in person. Sometimes you go on a garden tour too, and you might ask the gardener, hey, what is this? And they'll be like, I don't know. It's been here for 8 years. I lost the tag years ago. So that's a resource. I just noticed there was a gap and a need for that. Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad to hear you got some good notes. And does anyone have any additional questions about your project specifically? I'm happy to hang out for a bit. Talk about gardening all day. Awesome. Thank you, Mimi. I'm so glad this could be helpful. Thank you, Teresa. Ooh, Sierra, you have a question. Let me get a drink real quick. So when it comes to soil, do you have any tips on how to get it analyzed? I'm especially curious about things like lead, where we're planting a veggie and fruit garden, very old houses surrounding very small yards. Yeah, you should definitely get a soil test done. So great first place to start. So this is kind of in the industry. This has become a joke that everybody sends everybody to the Master Gardener Answer Clinic or plant helplines. So if you have, especially here in the United States, if you have a Master Gardener program in your area, most Master Gardener programs, the first resource that they offer will be a plant helpline or an answer clinic. They have various names for this type of resource. This is something that I took this training a long time ago. I've been an active Master Gardener. I'm going to brag a little bit. I was the youngest active Master Gardener to complete the program. The volunteer hours, I was 15 because I was a huge nerd. So I am an absolute geek when it comes to Master Gardener programs and their resources. And the Answer Clinic in this area, that's the point. You're trained as a Master Gardener volunteer. You get all of this great gardening information. And then folks volunteer to help run this Answer Clinic or this helpline and connect people to the best resources. So Master Gardeners, if you can reach out to your local ones, they can connect you with some of the best local soil testing labs. And there are various tests that you can get. You can research this on your own too. Just put soil testing lab your area. And typically, so around here, $30, you can get a pretty comprehensive panel that'll give you all the information you need about growing vegetables and such. When it comes to lead testing, you might want to reach out to the soil testing lab before you order and start taking a soil sample, just to make sure that you're selecting the right test, that lab in particular tests in that way. But yeah, local soil testing labs, somewhere around $30. Maybe it's probably more like $40 by now. Last time I did it was a few years ago. And to take a soil sample, there's sort of approach where you're going to get like an average little sample of soil. So you dig a little hole that's like about 6 inches deep, and then you want to scrape a little bit of that soil. You want to use a plastic shovel, because if you're using like an old rusty shovel, that can affect your results, for example. So you scrape a little bit. You want to get like a cross section of the soil, and you want to get an equal amount of soil from all these different spots in your yard. Any good soil testing lab is going to have some resources on how to do that. It sounds complicated, but if you watch a YouTube video on the best practices, Master Gardeners, again, if you reach out, you're like, hey, I want to get my soil tested, they'll have an email ready to copy and paste, because this, best resources, sometimes they have kits you can pick up with like a form that you can just fill it out and mail it in. It's really cool. So it sounds a little bit fancy. It's good to get a perfect average, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be perfect. Get a good average in general. But that's the process. And sometimes the soil test that anybody who is starting a garden project, you should start with a soil test, but definitely ask the soil testing lab which one's best for you and your end goals. So if you're trying to grow something that's like a crop, I grow a lot of dahlias. I love dahlias. They're pretty high maintenance as far as plants go, and they have very specific soil needs. So I need to be adjusting the pH of the soil, and they have certain nutrients that they will use up from the soil that I need to reapply. So I'm getting a more detailed soil test for those plants, because I'm trying to optimize the soil, right, to produce more of a crop. As opposed to many landscaping plants, they don't need quite the amount of nutrients in the soil. The idea is that you're selecting plants that match the soil you have, instead of, when you're growing a crop, for example, you might be trying to change the soil. So it sort of depends on what you're doing. You're going for some veggies and fruits and such, so soil test, that'll be the way to go. Any additional questions, things I can help with? Oh, here we go. I didn't scroll down all the way. Let me see. Awesome. Ellie, you got plenty of notes. I'm so glad to hear that. Yes, university extensions as well. Many Master Gardener programs are actually a branch of university extension agencies. And sometimes if you don't have a Master Gardener program in your area, your university extension, that's the way to go, for sure. They are a resource available to the public to answer questions. Let's see. So Jennifer from Wyoming, you created a dry bed last year, but you used plastic as a liner. Recommendations for how to redo it without the plastic. So let's see. So you have a dry creek bed, you put plastic underneath that. So when it comes to using landscape fabric or plastic as a mulch under or around plants, that's not something I recommend, because it's not super effective where you have plants growing. That's going to create a barrier for plant roots can't respire. Underneath something like a dry creek bed is one of the few exceptions where sometimes it can make sense to put something underneath that, because gravel or rocks are not always necessarily, if you cleared all the weeds out of the area really well first, then and you put at least a couple inches of rocks, then you're not generally going to get things coming up from underneath that. But having a layer of something underneath can stop things from settling. So sometimes people will do it. It might not be necessary. So are you talking about a decorative? Maybe I should get a few follow-up questions here. A few decorative, so is it like a decorative dry creek bed that's sort of, maybe narrow through the space? And thank you so much, Mrs. Newton. That's super helpful. I'm pointing out how some of the questions. So yeah, so Jenny, let me know about that. If it's more of a decorative thing, if it's just for a small part of the landscape, at this point it might make sense to just leave it. Recommendations of how to redo it without the plastic. But if that plastic is maybe moving water along through that dry creek bed too quickly, then that could be that could make sense to remove it for that reason. Of course, using plastic landscape fabric in the landscape, even using cardboard, this is introducing plastic pollutants to the landscape, because there's microplastics, right? These plastics will break down over time, and then they will just become a permanent part of the landscape. So while it's something that, that I don't recommend around plants, or using landscape fabric as a mulch around plants, it is not that effective at preventing weeds, and then it just creates a mess. Doing it somewhere where there are not plants is one of the few times when it can be a little bit more okay to do that, but then it becomes that ethical thing about using plastic in the landscape. So recommendations how to redo it without the plastic. If the weeds have been fully removed from the area, the weed and the gravel is deep enough, the weeds will not be coming up from underneath, right? So that plastic, after a certain point, is not really serving a purpose besides perhaps keeping those rocks from kind of settling and sinking into the soil. That is why some people will choose to put landscape fabric or plastic underneath a decorative dry creek bed or a pathway, because over time it will sort of pack down and settle, but over a really long time. So it's not necessary. But if the weeds have been properly fully removed from the area before it was installed, then the plastic just might not be necessary. This is something having someone come out, visit your site might be a good idea in this case. Already breaking down. Yeah, that could be a big project, but it could be the right thing to do to get that plastic out of the space. This is something I think having somebody see it in person might be the way to go. It'd be my recommendation. I wish I could be more helpful. Maybe I provided just a little bit of insight as far as, landscape fabric, plastic that can be used to smother out weeds. Other things can be used to smother out weeds too. There are other methods for killing weeds that don't require the use of plastic. But once it's been covered with enough material, it's not doing anything to stop the weeds at that point anyway. Maybe that's helpful information. Let me know if there's any other insights that I could provide into that. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, Sierra, Master Gardener's farmer's market booth. That is a really common place. I've spent a lot of hours at farmers market booths answering people's questions. Ooh, having a hard time getting ideas for your corner lot that's facing south. Not much out there for inspiration. I think perhaps a walk or a drive around your neighborhood could be a good idea, or neighborhood, nearby, any maybe suburban areas nearby where you could drive, hang out on the south side of people growing things along the street, get some local inspiration, see what's doing well. For you, it might be maybe you're not finding an exact picture that captures exactly what you're looking for, but then you can at least find pieces, puzzle pieces, right? Oh, look at this plant that's thriving right along the street, right along a driveway on the south side of their house. Maybe you can learn what that plant is, snap a picture of it, learn what that plant is, and then that could be an element that you incorporate into your space. So it could be more of a piece by piece type of thing. Let's see, what else? Gotcha. You had another question, Ildi, that maybe disappeared? Gotcha. If you don't mind asking again, I'm excited to help out here. And Jennifer, you mentioned you had grass that you removed. How deep of gravel would you use without the bigger rocks? Ooh, this is going to be a context-dependent question. I don't feel super excited to answer this without knowing. So gravel if it's for the dry creek bed, without the bigger rocks. Yeah, this one's branching out a little bit beyond my expertise, I'm sorry to say. I definitely would recommend getting somebody out on site who can help out, or somebody locally as well, because the weeds that you have in Wyoming could be totally different from the things that I'm dealing with here too. Maybe you don't need that much gravel compared to what I would need in my area to really smother out anything that's, underneath the gravel. So thank you so much for your question. Definitely. Maybe the master gardeners, again, it's like where everybody sends everybody else when they're not sure how to answer. I don't know the best way to answer that. So maybe check out some additional resources there. Wonderful. And Ildi, if you have any more questions, let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And any additional questions, you might email, reach out to hello@gardenprojectacademy.com. And if you are looking for any of the links that I shared in this presentation, check out in the description below. Thank you so much. Let me check the chat one more time. Oh, Ildi, we got your question here. You live in Northern Virginia, planted black gum, and thinking of saucer magnolia in the front corner where the two roads meet. That'd be a good idea. I've heard they need protection from the wind. This is going to be another regionally specific one that because I'm not familiar with the area as much, you're going to need to reach out to a local resource for that one too. Thank you so much for sharing. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, and I'll be back tomorrow. I hope to see some of you there. Have a good one.